Hello and welcome to my latest career video. Now, following on from Barbados Joe Walcott yesterday, we jumped back to heavyweight, with former coloured heavyweight champion Frank Childs. So we will go through his main career opponents and some of his statistics. So on to those main opponents now. Frank Childs, fought Bob Armstrong, the king of the Battle Royale, on 3 occasions, scoring 3 wins. He also fought former coloured middleweight and heavyweight champion George Byers, scoring 1 win, 1 loss and 1 draw. So starting out with 2 trilogies. He then fights former coloured middleweight champion Joe Butler on 2 occasions, gaining 2 wins. And he also fights and loses twice to former coloured heavyweight champion Denver Ed Martin. Next up is the Barbados Demon we covered yesterday, Joe Walcott. Frank Childs defeats him in their only fight, and he twice fights and loses, both to the Galveston Giant Jack Johnson and Hall of Famer Joe Choyinski. Next up is Dan Creedon. Frank Childs loses to Dan Creedon, and then he fights a draw, to rough puncher Hank Griffin. Now the final names on here. The first is 5-fight series with Klondike Haynes. Now Frank Childs beats Klondike in all 5 contests. He also twice defeats big puncher Mexican Pete Everett before fighting a trilogy against Jack Bonner, scoring 1 win with no losses and 2 draws. So Frank Childs, as you can tell from slide 1, didn't have a massive career for the time. There are covered a total of 27 fights that include 15 wins, 8 losses and 4 draws. So on to the first of his stat slides. Frank Childs scored 24 knockouts in his career, 15 of them in 3 rounds or less, and Frank Childs scored 3 first round KOs. Now he did score 5 KOs against champions, 1 against Hall of Famers and 1 against pound for pounders, although as pre-rating era he scored 0 KOs over rated fighters. And in terms of rounds boxed, he fought a total of 332 rounds, including 61 title fight rounds, 98 rounds against champions, 30 rounds against Hall of Famers, and he also fought 33 rounds against pound for pound opponents. Now rounds against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters or ring champions of course are 0 due to his pre-rating era stats. So when we go on to the slide against champions, Childs had 13 fights against champions. That includes 7 wins, 5 losses and 1 draw. Now he defeated 4 individual champions. They were Bob Armstrong, George Byers, Joe Butler, we're going to call him George Butler, Joe Butler and Barbados Joe Walcott. And he knocked or stopped out all 4 of those opponents. Bob Armstrong, George Byers, Joe Butler and Barbados Joe Walcott. So 13 fights against champions were 4 beaten. When we go on to the Hall of Fame slide, we see that Childs had 5 fights against Hall of Famers. That included 1 win with 4 losses and no draws. The 1 individual Hall of Famer he defeated was Barbados Joe Walcott, and he also scored stoppage over him. So he has a Hall of Famer knockout against an individual fighter, the aforementioned Barbados Joe Walcott. So far, like a few fighters I've covered, he has stopped every champion and Hall of Famer he has fought in one fight or another. So on to the pound for pound category. He had 6 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 1 win with 5 losses and no draws. He defeated the same as Hall of Famer in pound for pounder Barbados Joe Walcott, and also scored stoppage over Barbados Joe Walcott. So Frank Childs, there's his main opponents, his slides against champions, Hall of Famers and pound for pounders. So when we move on, to the next slide, it is against rated opponents, and of course as a pre-rating era fighter, Frank Childs fought no fights against rated opponents, so his record against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters and ring champions are 0. Thus he also defeated no individual rated fighters and scored knockouts over 0 individual rated opponents. Obviously with ratings around at the time, that would have been a different story. So on to his title fight record. Frank Childs had a total of 7 world title fights. Included in that are 3 wins with 2 losses and 2 draws, and Frank Childs scored 2 title defences. Now in terms of title fight KOs, Frank Childs scored 3 title fight KOs in total. Hey, good morning Martin, good to see you buddy. He scored 0 wins against top 10 fighters in title fights, 0 wins against top 3 fighters in title fights, and 0 wins against champions in title fights. He did score 1 win against ring champions in title fights. Sorry, he did score 1 win against a champion in a title fight, but he scored 0 wins against Hall of Famers and pound for pounders in title fights. So Childs still managed to have 7 title fights himself, even though he didn't have the largest resume. And when we go on to titles, one Frank Childs, okay, he was a 2-time coloured heavyweight title holder. He was also quite a solid puncher, okay, he was quite a dangerous puncher, even though he didn't weigh like 200 pounds like many heavyweights would now or then. He came in lighter than that, but he was still quite a dangerous puncher, even against, varied opponents. He thus, as a coloured heavyweight title holder, held none of the established lineal titles. He was also not undisputed champion in the established divisions. So, a short video on Frank Childs, following on from the Barbados Demon Joe Walcott, albeit they fought each other. Frank Childs is my latest heavyweight. Okay, he'll now be scored in my top 1,000 boxers of all time, the new score system. That is my big experiment, because ultimately, until there's enough numbers in there and I can sit and look at it and look at the fighters and think about what they did, we'll see what the changes made to the ratings have resulted in. But what I think it should do is it should give a more unbiased view, considering the rating era against the non-rating era, okay, because I did kind of combat that in my old rankings, but I'm trying to enhance that, so we get a better comparison despite the rating era. So that I can't go into detail, but it's much more complicated than that, but that's what these new rankings are. So I will score Frank Childs in there. In the meantime, I'll say good morning to Martin, good to see you as always, buddy. I'm gonna watch your email over the next few days, buddy, because I'm gonna send you a load more of those things I was sending you, just so you can have a look at them. And meantime, to everyone else, okay, I'll say have a good day. Take care of yourself. Be safe. I'm Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.